are live with one of my faves. Carlos, you've been one of my faves for a long time and you know it. And we'll talk about why in just a minute. But we are live with the one and only Carlos Granda. Carlos, thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. We finally made it to this.
It's been a long time coming. That's what I say. We met during the pandemic. Carlos was an SVP of customer success at Google, and you had posted something. I'm going to link it down below. That was very progressive, and I remember taking a screenshot and sending it to some friends. I had no idea who you were, and I just thought how awesome that you were willing to take a stand so publicly, given your position. And then I reached out. You probably thought I was insane. And now years later, here we are. So very, very excited to pick your brain today. Yeah.
Journey that we're here.
That's right. Despite all the craziness. But so one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is we were having a conversation offline about humanizing customer success. So for some background of folks who maybe don't know you, you were, like I mentioned, an executive at Google for customer success, some other companies we might have heard of, including just recently the SVP at RingCentral for their customer success teams, SAP, Salesforce. I saw you were at Oracle for a while. So just a couple giant, massive names leading global organizations through this charge of customer success. So maybe before we dive into how we humanize CX with AI, tell us, those who maybe don't know you, a little bit about you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I've been in the enterprise software industry for over 30 years, all the time focused on sort of post-sales. I started as a developer, then an architect, but I wasn't very good. So they realized that I'm probably better at running teams and running P&Ls. And so I've been doing this for quite a long time. And so I've watched our function evolve over time as technology has disrupted the spaces, as things have come around, customer success and post-sales in general has played in such a critical role. And especially today where macroeconomic conditions, customer success becomes a very critical, very important piece of an enterprise software company to protect the revenue. Right? It's not just about getting new customers, but it's also about protecting the base and making sure your customers are getting the most value out of it. So I've been doing this for quite a while.
For just a minute. But that kind of makes you our resident expert. So I'm going to ask you some questions. We were just teasing before I pressed the record button. This truly is me learning in public. And I have no shame. I will ask you all the questions. So hopefully this is really helpful. One of the things that you mentioned while we were talking last time was this idea around how we can leverage AI to humanize customer success, or what I now dub, because what's tech without an acronym, CX. So what are your thoughts around that? What does that even mean?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Look, AI is a very disruptive technology. It's already impacting every aspects of life, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in education, transportation. And as AI becomes more powerful and more widely spread, it's going to have even a greater impact in just humanity in every single industry. And so it doesn't make any difference, or it doesn't really, when you think about the enterprise software industry, AI is and will continue to have an impact to it. It's providing probably a better customer experience, a better way to cover those accounts. I mean, when you think about it, one of the toughest challenges that you have, and especially in large software companies, you have the concept of a high touch model and a scale model. And a high touch model is when you hire humans to go and take care of those accounts. So think of it as like an account manager on the post-sales side of it. Making sure customers are they're getting value out of it. But then when you start thinking about sort of what I think of it as below the line, sort of the tail of the business, which is sort of the small to medium sized customers, hiring bodies to just take care of and giving them that same experience that, let's say, a Bank of America might have, becomes very difficult from a cost perspective, from a global perspective. It just becomes very, very difficult. And so I think this is where technology and AI specifically can truly improve how we engage with customers. How do we provide them better support? How do we actually recommend better products, better offerings that they might be able to leverage? So I do think that AI will continue to have a very, very big impact in customer success.
So that's interesting because of course, my brain is going, okay, how do you make that happen? So how does, like we just mentioned, you have quite the resume of organizations that could implement that, where do you start? Because I know exactly what you mean, where you have, one person who owns 400 accounts. There's no way that they're giving them the amount of level and detail and speed of response that these accounts would need to really flourish and grow. So where do you start when you've got such a massive number of below the line accounts?
Yeah, so you guys are thinking about building a framework, right? And the
Okay.
framework really looks at, when you think about an account that is performing really, really well, there's specific criteria, there's specific attributes that makes that customer or that account to be growing. Could be their industry, it could be their technology maturity, it can be geographically where they're located, right? So there's a lot of things that really make an account grow very, very fast. So if you reverse engineer that and you say, okay, now let's start creating some frameworks around customer health, potentially around customers that might churn, that might leave you, right? So we start building the framework, that same CSM that is covering those 400 accounts, AI might be able to say, you know what, this quarter, let's focus on these 20 accounts.
Yeah.
You can't cover all 400, but let's focus on these 20 because their health score or where they're at could be that they could be churning.
Right.
And so it gives you a different framework. And so if you develop think about it as a 2x2 framework that says, hey, for these accounts that are going to churn, here's a playbook. For these accounts that we want to expand and grow, and they may be primed to positioning, let's say, a new product, let's go after these accounts. Here's a playbook for those. And so when you start thinking about it in the simplest form is you create a 2x2, which is a maturity model. Each one of them have a playbook associated with it. AI can then analyze the data of those 400 customers and tell you, hey, this quarter, these 20, we're going to make sure they don't churn. Yeah. These other 15 over here have the potential to expand and grow, and you have different products you can position them. So the CSM can actually more targeted give those customers what they need instead of trying to pretend that you're going to call all 400 customers. That's just insane, and it'll never happen.
So that's interesting. I was thinking you were replacing the people with AI. You're making this an augmented support, analytics, and even directional input on, hey, this is the playbook, or this is the message. This is their health score, to your point, or maybe potentially some other data point that would be leveraged by the human. Did I get that right?
Yeah, for sure. So look, the way you think about leveraging AI, there's really two ways that at least I would consider, and then I've sort of thought about as, how does AI going to impact us? There's a default piece of it, which is like, let's just AI make the decisions for us. Let them interact with our customers. So if a customer calls in and says, hey, I have a particular support issue, right? AI can go and scan hundreds and thousands of support tickets and come up and say, hey, here's the 4 or 5 recommended answers of how these things have been solved. Unlike in search before, where you would just get a list of articles that you have to go figure it out, AI can actually be more sort of proactive of figuring out how they can actually solve their own issues.
Yeah.
But then you start thinking about the partnering with AI. And when you partner with AI, AI can actually give you the tools to ensure that then you can then call on the customers. And so it's not about replacing people. It's really about making people more efficient. Yeah. There's always a fear about AI and it's going to take people's jobs. I think we're always, in humanity, we've always been looking at things that's going to make us better, fast. How do we optimize those tasks that sometimes are very difficult to do? Computer can come in and with a computing power at speeds that we can't even imagine, they can give us better answers. So then it makes us and gives us the opportunity to be more targeted when we are talking to customers.
And I think to your point, that's the name of the game, is how do we make sure we're sticky? How do we make sure that we're giving them things that are relevant to them in their industry, getting them to think ahead, look at their holistic, maybe stack or objectives, outcomes, whatever it is, mission, depending on who you're talking to. That's interesting. One of the things that you did is you wrote an article back in 2018 about AI and some predictions. And I'm going to link that below too. I want everyone to read it and tell me your thoughts. And you've got a new article coming out. Actually, it should be out when this releases. So I'm super excited to see that, which I will also link for everybody interested. So I'm curious to get your overall thoughts, because you mentioned, there's this fear around people losing their jobs. As a recovering attorney, there's a lot of people that are afraid of, where does my IP sit? Where does my competitive intelligence sit if I'm feeding this to AI? So there's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of unknowns. I was just on with another tech giant, literally in my last call, and we're working on a massive generative AI project, and we're addressing all of these issues. So these are real all across the board globally, these concerns. Where are you when I say all things AI? Where are you going to take this article? What are you advising? Because I know right now you're advising some of the largest companies already, not a surprise. So where are you going with this? Where's your sense with where AI is and where it's going to go generally?
Yeah. So when you think about, I guess when I was thinking about it back in 2018, it was truly about leveraging existing data, right? So the traditional AI back in even 5 years ago, it was all about feeding it data, feeding the information, where the data is coming from, and then allowing the AI to sort of calculate, use the algorithms, use their computing power to come up with solutions. So that's how we thought back then, to start thinking about how do we actually make people better. But back then you're leveraging only the data that you're giving them. So there's risk to that, right? So there's potentially bias and discrimination. If the data that you're putting in comes from a point of a bias, automatically the outputs of that AI is going to give you discrimination, AI, bias, and things like that. I think the new world of AI, where you're thinking about general AI, is now you're allowing them, just giving them the rules of the game, what the output you want it to be. You're not necessarily telling them just go and get as much data as you want. It's like, no, here's the rules of the game, go figure it out. Yeah. So I was reading this book that talks about chess, for example. And so before, the computer would get millions and millions of sample games. Then the computer would then go and calculate it and say, okay, which ones have better risk, better, which pieces can I give up, and things like that. The new AI that has been built now focuses more around just giving them the rules of chess. Here's what the pieces do. Here's how they move. And then the ultimate objective is to win at all cost. And so that computer itself, and the book is it's called The Age of AI. It's a great book. And it talks specifically about that. And it kind of that's what made me truly realize is then this particular one is you just give them the rules of the game, the output of winning. And so this computer actually went in there and took risks in giving up pieces, like the queen, for example, willing to give it up because it would increase the chances of them winning. And so now the AI learned to teach itself that I am going to win at all costs, and that means that I'm going to give up certain things. That you have to be careful with that, right? If somebody weaponizes that, the same concept, which is at all costs, somebody may say, well, we may lose 5,000 lives, but I'm going to save 1 million lives.
Right, but we'll cure cancer. Yeah, exactly.
So you still have a human aspect that needs to be involved in things like that. So I think that's how I think about it, is that this new AI is more powerful. You have from your grandmother to your 3-year-old kid using and leveraging AI nowadays. Yeah. So you have to have guidelines, controls to make sure you protect it. So it really is for the better of humanity, not just so people can take advantage of it. So it's a very interesting time. But I do think the benefits completely outweigh the risk. So we need to just make sure that we as an organization and as a human world, that we put the right controls and guidelines to ensure that we do it the right way.
Yeah, that's a deeper conversation. Speaking of deeper conversations, actually, I just coerced, maybe it's the right word, begged. No, just kidding. But I did ask Carlos, I knew this conversation would go long because our conversations offline go forever. And I like it that way. So LinkedIn has this new long form tool that they're testing out right now in beta. So Carlos and I are going to do a long form discussion about this because I have more questions when you, like the second you said, well, I think it's more, good than bad. I'm like, we got to dig into that. So put a pause on that. We are going to add that to the agenda for our long form discussion. And I will keep everyone posted on when that's going to come out. But in the meantime, since we only have like literally 5-6 minutes, I want to pivot real quick because, like I mentioned when we first kicked off, one of my favorite things about you is the human side of you. I know because I've spoken to a lot of your employees at Google, they feel the exact same way about you. And you have this ability of really bringing the human element to very big corporate America and, very giant deals and giant teams and all of that. And you have something that I think is so unique that I would love to share. And by me, I mean you. And you call it your 4 pillars, your 4 pillars of purpose. Unpack that for us. What does that mean? And if you're listening, take notes.
All right. Well, I just came up with the concept though, because I didn't know what to call it. So about a few months ago, I decided that I was sort of done working in corporate America, and trying to describe that has been in itself a journey. I started with I'm retired, but that just sounds like I'm laying on a hammock drinking a margarita, and that's not really what I'm doing. Semi-retired. Some people said I've graduated to the next phase of my career. Some people say now you're like a grandfather because you can take care of the kids, spoil the kids, but you have to give them back.
Right.
So when I started thinking about what I truly enjoy and love, I said, you need to break it down. So I wrote this concept of a mission statement, my purpose statement. And I broke it down in those 4 areas. So number 1 was mentoring. So today I work with Alban and Stanford, as well as Techstars, to mentor young entrepreneurs that are sort of trying to get into this world. 2, I'm part of Onkelos Investments, where I want to be a mentor. I want to be an investor in some of these startups. It's amazing to hear how they're thinking about it. It's amazing. So I'm learning. It's a fun exercise to learn about what technology and how they're thinking about the world. And then 3rd is I work around with PE firms and other companies like Bain as part of their Bain Advisory Network to help companies either through the due diligence process or post to ensure that they're helping and they're growing and giving these PE firms what they're looking for, which is their return. So those are the 3 out of the 4 big pillars, which I said, that's what I really love to do. I like to advise. I like to mentor. I like to watch young people sort of grow and evolve, and hopefully they can learn a little bit from my background. And the 4th one, which is the thing I've been doing since 2015, is my soccer nonprofit. So we started a nonprofit back in 2015, mainly to teach my kids a lesson around the value of giving back. And no matter what in this world, there's always somebody that needs more than you guys need. And so that was sort of the concept. And so we just recently came back from Costa Rica, where we took a bunch of soccer equipment, soccer gear, soccer balls, shoes to these 40 kids, who was just an amazing experience where we gave it to them and they truly appreciate it. So those are what I'm calling my 4 pillars of purpose. So to call it retirement, I'm spending about 3 or 4 days just doing those 4 pillars. So I don't even call it retirement. So
how did you get there? Because I'm a little guilty of doing too much, signing up for everything. Of course, because I'm so purpose driven. That just is such a part of me that I just enjoy. It gives me energy. It's the reason I have a hard time sleeping on Monday mornings. I'm ready to go, but there's a balance. So do you have any guidance for those who are watching now or watching later? How do you find your purpose? How did you get to those 4 pillars, and why only 4? I have 4 million. Any guidance there for living a purpose-driven life?
I don't know if I don't know if it's a strategy or a thought that is for everybody. I think everybody's at different places in their careers and their lives. So I don't know for me what it was. I don't know if it was the post-pandemic. I don't know if it's being an empty nester. I don't know if it's, becoming really, really old. I don't know what it was, but it just, I found that
I'm old. So that can't work.
Well, for me, so it became truly about what is it that I enjoy doing, right? It got to a point like, well, how much is enough? Or how much is what am I looking for? It's almost like trying to find the next thing. And I'm like, I've had 30 years. I've met incredible amounts of people. I've worked for great companies and been very fortunate. So I don't want to wait until I'm 70 years old or 80 years old and say, okay, let me stop now. Let me go figure out what my new purpose is, because I may be too old and tired by then. So I figure, it's time now. Let's take advantage of it now. And I can help my kids and teach them a moment that it's okay to stop and always reassess your life. I always tell them that every 6 months, just sit back and say, what should I stop? What should I start? And what should I continue to do?
Yeah.
Because it's just good. Otherwise, you're doing things that sometimes are things that you shouldn't be doing.
Do you start with goals, or do you have objectives as you're like, okay, these are my 4 things, these are my objectives, or no, that's too much like a business plan. It's whatever fills you. Okay.
That's smart. No, I think it's like I just start with the things that I enjoy doing. And so when I look, and people say it's like your voice changes, your demeanor changes when you start mentoring somebody, or you're sharing people that people can hear. I don't know if it's a Latino thing, but it's the passion in my voice when I'm helping or advising or doing those kinds of things. So I think that's what truly kind of made me realize, or at least think, that what is truly important to me is what makes me happy. And if that's helping other things and helping others, then we have a perfect match.
Yeah. I've said this a couple times, if you follow me on LinkedIn, but I quote it all the time, and I think it's so true, and you're reminding me of it. Warren Buffett said, love is an interesting thing. The more you give, the more you get back. Yeah. And to hear that those are the things that fuel you, and how excited you get, it's just personifying what he says, that quote of, it gives you energy. It gives you more than, as a foster parent. In fact, I've posted about this too. I feel guilty with how much I love it, because it's supposed to be about the kids, when really my whole family amps up. Everyone's excited. People bringing presents, clothes, all the things. And it's really true. So I think, as much as we can, there's a lot of books out there that talk about building out this very organized structure about what gives you purpose and all these kinds of things. But I think one thing that I've learned from you consistently is just dive in, and to your point, reassess. I think that's a very good life advice. Reassess every 6 months. Go, okay, what should I start? What should I stop? What should I keep doing? That's great. That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you. And we're already 2 minutes over. We do this all the time. But thank you, Carlos. You are a wonderful human being, an exceptional leader. And I hear you're a good dancer, so one day I'll find out. I guess we'll find out. I don't know. I just made that up.
Whoever told you that, they're lying. They're leveraging some AI tool to lie to you.
There you go. We could have AI, kind of teach us. I don't know. But anyway, stay tuned for the long form talk with Carlos. If you've got questions for him, I would love to know. I like to give him a hard time. So if you have questions that are particularly difficult, bring him on. But seriously, Carlos, for those who maybe want to follow you outside of the article that we're going to post, where can they find you? Where's a good place to get a hold of you?
Usually LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me, or on Twitter or X. Now,
it's very progressive of you.
Yes, yeah, that's it. Oh. I don't have business cards. I mean, I should have business cards that I can mail to people.
There you go.
Really old school, so I decided not to.
Sometimes old school is good. What can I say? But anyway, you're a delight as always. Thank you so much for your insights, and stay tuned. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks.